Round 2 of peace talks is delayed. The meeting is set for Abu Dhabi next Wednesday and Thursday. Kushner and Putin's negotiator Dmitriev already met with the Russian side the day before. Our special correspondent Dmitro Anopchenko is following the progress of the negotiations. We'll discuss the details live. He is now joining the broadcast from the American Congress. Dmitro, welcome. What is known about the Florida part, and what should we expect from the Emirati one?
Well, regarding the Florida part, the day before, Witkoff and Kushner met for a day, but it wasn't just them. It wasn't only them who met with Putin's envoy Dmitriev. This took place at a private golf club owned by Witkoff, and there are practically no details except for 2 brief posts on social media. They say the meeting was constructive, but there are honestly very few details, and in fact, this might actually indicate that, well, there isn't much to talk about. Here's what Witkoff wrote afterwards, and there's an interesting quote. Listen to it verbatim. "The meeting gives us hope that Russia is working towards ensuring peace in Ukraine." So, if you just look at the words, it doesn't say that Russia agrees or that Russia is leaning towards a compromise, but rather that it gives hope that Russia is working on it. In other words, they're not even sure. What can we say for certain? That during this tour, Russia was once again offered to establish economic relations with the United States in exchange for a ceasefire. Well, how can we judge this? This also isn't stated publicly, but I looked at the composition of the American delegation. In the American negotiating team in Florida, in addition to the usual Witkoff and Kushner, who long met with Dmitriev this time, and I even think it's either the first time or rarely, there were also the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, and attention, White House Senior Advisor Josh Greenbaum. I asked my diplomatic sources. I was told that it is his direct responsibility to attempt a reset of economic relations between Washington and Moscow, and there are also many informal conversations suggesting that by offering to restore economic cooperation to Moscow, the White House wants, in this way, to persuade it to agree to a ceasefire and to achieve some results from these negotiations, these major negotiations. This time, the Russian representative Dmitriev sparked conversations, and now I'd like to ask our directors to show footage of him as he leaves the hotel in Florida in Miami to go to the negotiations. And please pay attention to the metal case he is holding in his hands. He usually comes to negotiations with leather briefcases, but this time suddenly he was holding an item that at first glance looks like a secret case. It's very common during negotiations for negotiators to bring along such a secret metal case to deliver confidential documents or maps. And it's always a metal case with a combination lock. I've even seen it sometimes strapped to a person's hand just to ensure maximum security so that no one can snatch it or run up and grab it. And why is this detail so important? If it were a secret briefcase, one could reasonably conclude that Russia brought something very specific, so either detailed maps where they might have marked their vision of the dividing line, or at least some kind of final or interim version of peace agreements. In any case, that would be quite serious. And in the morning, I did an enormous amount of work. I asked both top American diplomats and even a former agent of what's called diplomatic security, the security service of the State Department, and posed this question to everyone. So tell me, what specifically could Dmitriev have been holding in his hands? Well, what you just saw. There was even a theory I heard that Dmitriev carries with him, a special communications device so that he can call Putin directly from the negotiations in Florida, not using a mobile phone, which could be tapped, but through a special secure line. However, after looking at the size of that suitcase, a former Secret Service agent told me that it just can't be, that it simply doesn't fit the size requirements. And you know, before the broadcast, I actually found out what it is that the Russian negotiator is holding. Now let me ask, we'll show you the graphic. It looks impressive, but in reality, we found out that it's a mass-market item, although an expensive one costing nearly $2,000. We found this exact model for sale on a website. It's stylish and fashionable, but it doesn't have any of the features used for transporting classified documents. In other words, excuse my language, but it's just for show, not an actual attempt to ensure secrecy. And you know, it's such a small, seemingly insignificant detail, but at first it really gave us hope. Maybe Russia is actually ready to get down to specifics. Maybe at least they brought something concrete to Florida, but now it turns out, unfortunately, that's not the case. And regarding the second round in the Emirates, which really, as the president said, is being postponed from today to next Wednesday and Thursday, it was initially planned that this would be a direct conversation between Ukrainian and Russian negotiators, essentially without the participation of the Americans. In other words, it was said that neither Vitkov nor Kushner would be flying in. I checked with diplomatic sources, and as of yesterday, even the Americans had not yet decided who from their side would be flying in, who would be present, but only as an observer, not as a participant. Well, it was planned that it would be one of Rubio's deputy specialists, but nothing has been finalized yet. Interestingly, Ukraine is still proposing that either Vitkov or Kushner join in, even if not in person, at least via video link. But the situation remains uncertain, up in the air. Well, it even got to the point that as of yesterday, the Americans hadn't even informed the negotiation participants about when they were rescheduling it. All of this concerns, all of this is complicated not because of the Ukrainian issue. It's important to say that it's important to understand, but because of the situation around Iran, since the American team might actually strike Iran. This has been under consideration all week. And what's interesting is that in an interview with an American journalist, Trump said that he doesn't even share the details of his plans regarding Iran with allies. He said, "We don't tell them what the plan is. It's just as bad as if I told you." And to wrap up, I want to announce that tonight at 9 on Red Lines, I'll be talking about this unique new platform about which we don't know much yet, about Abu Dhabi, about the Emirates, with a truly unique person who was Tony Blinken's deputy, who was responsible for this region, and who personally knows the president of the Emirates, Sheikh Mohammed. And we'll discuss how the Emiratis are positioned. Are they pro-Russian? What should we expect from them? We'll even talk about the work of Emirati intelligence. Join us at 9 o'clock tonight on Red Lines as our colleagues join us from Kyiv.
Dmytro, thank you very much. Reporting from Washington, that was our special correspondent, Dmytro Anopchenko. Thank you, colleague. Here in the newsroom, we realized that we've only ever heard about Putin's suitcase with his samples. We wondered who actually knows what it looks like. Thank you so much, and really don't miss Red Lines this evening. Thank you.